Morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this IBS Intelligence Intellect Design Arena webinar on core banking modernization, with particular reference to the African experience. Digital banking in Africa is gaining significant traction in terms of regulatory initiatives, technological advancements, and customer preferences, but legacy core systems act as a barrier for banks to truly embrace the benefits of digitization. So we are going to be investigating how to get around this problem. Joining me today are Charles Washika, Director ICT and Innovation at Cooperative Bank of Kenya, Raju Dariani, Business Head Digital Core at Intellect Design Arena, Vincenzo Casilio, Principal at Cedar Management Consulting, and Alamin Sadruddin, Merchant Group Chief Technology Officer and Digital Transformation, Exim Bank, Tanzania. I am Robin Amlo, Managing Editor of IBS Intelligence, and you are most welcome joining us. We'll begin with setting the scene globally. I'm going to ask Raju Dariani, if you would, Raju, what are the trends we're seeing, first of all, in global banking?
Thanks, Robin. So I think I'd like to share a presentation which basically concludes what we think are the major trends in the banking world today and where things lie. So if you allow me, I'll just share my screen. Is it coming through? I hope we can see them.
We have your presentation on screen.
Okay, excellent. So here are some thoughts that Intellect put together, and what we understood are trends. Of course, this would not be the end of things, but what we think are the key trends which we like to mirror and try to be prepared for. So in the first aspect of the trend, if you look at it, is what we see is contextual personalization. Now, by this, we are talking of, where a person is looking to be offered a kind of product, and a particular product which is meeting their needs at that instance of their life cycle. It's not just talking about grouping of customers and saying, let's offer products. Here we say, at this point of where the person is in the life cycle, a loan of this effect for this particular amount is relevant. So that should be offered instantly, rather than when the person is not looking for a loan, and we as a bank, we look at trying to offer that to a client, and that's really not how things would be. That's how we see contextual personalization. To further contextualize that, I mean, BCG estimates, for example, that every 100 billion of bank assets there's a 300 million in revenue growth if we are able to really find the right product at the right time for the customers. So that's a key trend that we have noted, and we basically, as IGCB, we look at that and say, the customer data across life cycle touch points need to be understood. We need to come across as to which is the relevant product which will make sense. So therefore, that needs to be offered at that moment of time. And this cannot be limited just to the boundaries of what the banking services. We are talking about it, where as a financial supermarket is what we envisage the bank to be. And any product and service which is related to the financial services is what the bank should be looking to offer to their end customers at that point in time. So that's our suggestion of how it would work. Okay, so obviously for all that to happen, we need to have the algorithms in place. We need to match up a bit with the data, with the AI put together, and find what is the right opportune moment to offer the appropriate product, right? And also being able to link with third parties and increase the data points so that we are not just reflecting what the banking services are within the bank. So this is one trend we are looking at. When we move forward, we look at open finance as a second trend. We see that as it's very, very important, again, relevant to point number one. We see that, we are looking at how we need to bring the marketplace in effect. How are we going to have the referral ecosystems and third party to be integrated in a way that does not consume a huge amount of time and effort from the banking perspective. So gone are the days when we are talking about when we have an interface and we need to do programming and we need to be able to, test that out, and that whole cycle basically misses the exact, cycle where the bank would actually be able to capture the client. So we need to be looking at the API situation. We see that as a very conscious effort which the banks are moving to. And the trend here is very clearly seen by the fact that using what it is, the green field banks, we are talking of acquisitions in terms of $5 and $35 vis-a-vis in the past, the ones which are using legacy methods are talking at $100 and $200 in terms of acquisition costs. So this is a major shift we see in the banking industry in that. And from that point of view is GCB, we are suggesting that we need to find the right models. We need to be able to look at the established KPIs and look at how that will, performance management. The APIs need to really be easy to integrate so that third-party systems can come in within days in terms of being able to be offered, because that's the only way we'd be able to capture the client's imagination and the client's wallet in that sense. So this is a second trend that we have seen. The third part is the composable part of banking, right? So when we look at this, today we are looking at the factor that we have systems coming that you have different products and services, but they're all put together and they work cohesively together. What we see in the future, the technology has to be future-proof. And what we are seeing is banks are looking at microservices, ensuring the factor that they could change. And we do not know actually what is the future in a couple of years, what services are to be rendered and exactly which services will take what direction. It's a changing world. So we've got to ensure that the architecture is completely future-proof and composable. So if there is tomorrow an insurance service which is of a specific nature and that needs to be brought in, that should not take any amount of time. That's the architecture has to be ready for that. So composability is a key part, lowering the cost and keeping it future-proof. So that's the third pillar that we are seeing as the trend. And from our perspective, what we suggest is that we got to have the open finance being leveraged. We need to be able to bring in third party and other vendors so that we are talking of a full financial supermarket experience that we can offer to the end customers. So essentially that's got to have a microservice based and an open API architecture. So this is the third trend that we are working on and moving forward with. Needless to say, cloud is here and the effect of that, and you can see what is some points here that where we've got McKinsey analysis stating that amongst the top 500 financial institutions, we are looking at generating $60 to $80 billion in the run rate for EBITDA in 2030. And this is only going to be coming from the fact of cost optimization and business use case, which is totally unlocked by the cloud. So the point here that we suggest is that you can't be today thinking of only taking a certain application or a product into the cloud. That's not the way it's going to work. We have got to think cloud native as a bank first, where we build that particular aspect of the thought process there, and then progressively modernize which functions need to go to the cloud and move that into a migration path. Unless we do that at a very high level and think in that pattern, it's not going to be bring it in a cohesive manner and provide the results that we are looking for. So that's another trend that we have seen. The last one, what we see is that this is very clearly visible, is the real-time payments. And this today is very visible from what has actually happened in terms of the numbers that you see up there. So we've gone from 16 billion almost to 21.5 billion in just a year. Okay, and a compound annual growth rate of 34.5%. So this is what we are seeing as a clear trend in the market. Now, to top that all, you can see the figures from which are the leaders in this in terms of trying to do this, the payments in this pattern. So you see over there, India, China, even Thailand. So these are emerging economies also are coming into this path where they're actually leapfrogging and moving from cash society to a cashless society. So basically, even jumping over the curve of credit cards, etc., and are going straight to this kind of a approach. So this is another trend we see, and we will believe the banks need to embrace towards this particular situation. So here, as to say, from IGCB perspective, we are talking about, whether you require wallets, whether it is in-house or partner-based, the banks have to think of that and look at the factor of how we are going to be able to have incoming and outgoing payments in a real-time fashion without having any intervention at all, because that's a critical piece of this puzzle. And pay attention to real-time business to consumer and business to business payments, because that's going to be the way forward, which is going to change the way the payments world is going to work, as what we see. So these are 5 trends that we see from a market perspective. Okay. And just to give you a very brief view of Intellect as a company, so you can see we are present in almost 100 countries with 270 plus customers. And the key part of our business is we are only focusing on BFSI. So for the last 30 years. So that's been our bread and butter, and we focus on that. That's entirely where all the R&D is spent, and the 1,000-odd research experts, we focus it in just that one direction. We have nothing else to think of. So that's a little bit brief from our perspective. So back to you, Robin.
Thank you very much indeed, Raju. If I could ask you to stop sharing your screen so that we can get everybody, that's what we want to see, the team ready and raring to go. But before we actually get into our little bit of knockabout, I want to ask the audience a question, because there is no free lunch, people who are watching this. You've got to take part as well. So I have a poll question for you that we are going to launch right now. And I'll give you a few seconds to vote on this, please. What is the most important benefit of core banking modernization? Is it enhanced customer experience, reduced IT maintenance, increased operational efficiency, improved integration through APIs? Please vote now. And if you're not voting, I'm thoroughly ashamed of you, and I will come through your screen and insist that you vote. We'll just give it another few seconds before we end the poll. Okay, let's take a look at the results. Well, it's fairly obvious that nobody gives a hoot about reduced IT maintenance. Which I suppose strikes me as slightly odd. I would have thought somebody would have put that, given that legacy core banking systems need to be nursed as though they're on life support in some instances. Do we have any feelings about this before we move on? Raju, I'll come to you first of all. It's obvious that enhancing the customer experience just by a short nose is the most important issue. Do you agree?
Yes, I mean, I think I go with that factor. I mean, the fact is that you have to enhance the customer experience is correct. And for that, the APIs and the efficiency is very important. So I think the vote is very in line with the fact that the IT costs may be going up, but the overall perspective would be going, increasing and additional revenue. So I think that's, in my view, is correct.
Vincenzo, would you agree, as the consultant here, who would be recommending solutions to a banking entity, is this the story you would be selling them? You're muted, young man.
Yeah, so in my view, I'll tell you, eventually everything ends up with enhanced customer experience. So to me, you will see that everything is about the ability to meet the customer expectations. So when you will have a core banking system which actually which provides a 24/7 support, is definitely, and it's very modular and can be integrated, eventually provides the final benefits to the customer. So that's the way I see it. So.
And we have, of course, with us two bankers who have gone through this experience, I guess. Charles, what was your view here? Cooperative Bank of Kenya, you are the Director of ICT and Innovation. Is this telling you what you expected it to tell you? Was this your approach?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to put the customer right in the middle of everything that we do. We don't do digital transformation just for the sake of it. So it really tells the story as it is. The customer is in the middle of everything. So everything that we do within technology and within the bank, we're thinking about the customer. So the results, I would have expected it to be higher, maybe at about 80%.
Would you say the same, Alamin?
Yeah, Robin. I think, yes, I also agree with Raju and Charles, because customer experience is something very, very critical at this point of time in the banking industries. You know, after post-pandemic also, the way the digital transformation has taken the revolutionary steps, the customers are more focused now. I mean, I would say as in my banking experience, we need to improve more and more customer service so that we can expand our customer reach, fuel our deposits. So this is, yes, extremely important. And I agree with Charles that I was also expecting the more percentage coming in on customer experience. So thank you.
All right, well, let me stick with you now, if I may. Raju, you were giving us a global perspective. Alamin, how is that reflected in what's happening in Africa? Why is it important for African banks to embrace a modernized core banking architecture? And what are, apart from customer experience, which we've just been ladling on with a soup spoon, what are the key priorities of the C-suite in banks for people like you?
Thank you, Robin. I think I will put CBA's modernization into probably two major categories. In my words, I would say that it's an internal driver and external driver. Now, what I mean by internal and external driver? So it's like, you know, your internal drivers are your products and channel growths. We have legacy systems, so you need to maintain your legacy system as well parallelly. At the same time, the focus is on the cost reduction. So these are all the internal drivers that needs a consideration. And when I talk about the external drivers, that is what we talk about: the regulatory compliance, increasing competitions, and customer-centric, as we just spoke. Because traditionally, banking has always been, you know, a product-centric, but now it's more towards customer-centric, you know. So single view for the customer, relationship-based pricing. These are the key factors, I think, which is driving us to take those steps on the key CBS modernizations. And then again, moving further, if I may expand a little bit more, the objectives, why we as a bank would like to go for CBS modernization at this point of time is also, again, the customer, as I said, always be into a center position where we have customer reach. As I mentioned, you know, you need to fuel your deposits, business standardizing, streamlining the business part, so that end-to-end process for the customer becomes very easy. So today, customer is always expecting that ease of my comfort, I need to do a banking. Those traditional banking where customer was visiting the branch is no more there. So those are the things. Technology-wise, there's a good expansion on technology. So we as a bank, we really need to take that benefit of those technologies so that, you know, the more customers are reached and we can meet our customer expectations. Open banking options are also available, as we are talking about neobanks, so many things, frameworks. And then lastly, I would say on the operational side, on the operation aspect as well, CBS modernization gives us the improved efficiency on our process, standardization of our process capabilities, eliminate some of the manual processes. Those are, I think, the key factor, I would say, Robin. Thank you.
Okay, Charles, how important is it for banks to showcase channels as the face of the bank from a technology perspective? What's the level of control banks should prefer when they're introducing new experiences?
Thank you, Robin. I think I'll go back to customer experience. I mean, channels really are the face of technology from a bank perspective. So they do abstract the technology behind the bank in as far as how we interacting with our customers. And let me use the pandemic as it were, what we went through, I think 2 or 3 years ago. So current customers have gotten used to interacting with whichever organization, and banks included, digitally. So whichever channel, the way a bank wants to show its technology or the way it wants to interact with its customer, it must use its channels. We've spoken about personalization. How do you interact with a customer at any given time and know that this is a customer, this is Charles, who probably needs to get a loan. And we've seen most customers right now, post-pandemic, they do not want to frequent the banks. They do not want to frequent the bank branch. And as a fact, I think what banks need to do right now is to reassess the need for branches and what they do with the branches. So channels have become the face of the bank. If you look at the demographic, especially, let's say in Kenya, the demographics, there are more and more young people who are frequenting banks. These are people who traditionally do not expect to move into a branch. They used to TikTok, Facebook, etc. So the way they would interact with the bank is using the same channels they're using, the mobile phone. And I think this is across Africa. Most people now are very mobile savvy, and the channel becomes the face of the bank from a technology perspective. So the expectation from our customers is they can be able to bank at any given time, 100%, 24/7. If you look at corporate bank, for example, as part of our vision, as we're doing this digital transformation journey, which we've been in for a number of years now, our vision was to be in the lives of our customers all the days of their lives through safer and joyful and simple experiences. And how we'd only able to do that is being with them wherever they are. And this is mobile. And as much as there are other channels, for example, the ATMs, etc., what you need to do then is to build that omni-channel experience across your channels, whether you're on mobile or whether you're on the phone, whether you're on the internet or ATMs, but mostly using mobile applications. So it's extremely important for banks to build that delightful customer experience using channels wherever the customer is.
Well, you use the phrase delightful customer experience. We are talking specifically about personalization across all channels.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to enlarge on the importance of that?
Absolutely. It's extremely important for you to understand your customer. And the only way you do this is by using the data which you have. So if you look at what most banks are doing, and certainly what we're doing is using analytics, using artificial intelligence, machine learning to understand your customer and personalize the experience that you have. If I frequent my mobile channel or internet banking, I should be able to get the service which is relevant to me, be it bill payments, be it loan application, instant loan applications, be it money transfers. Personalize the experience to me. If I'm a young person, let's say 18 years old, probably I do not need to get a mortgage at that point. I just need to do a payment, or I need to send some money to a friend of mine. So using analytics, you must personalize the experience of your customer. And this is absolutely critical for any channel experience that we give to our customers.
All right, let's get into the nuts and bolts now. I mentioned earlier, Vincenzo, you're the consultant. You'd be somebody who walks into a bank and says, this is the system you need. We can help you format it. We can arrange introductions, etc., etc., etc. So from your perspective, what are the anchors of core modernization, and how should African banks leverage them to digitize their core effectively?
Thank you, Robin.
Take notes, people, there will be a test on this.
So see, I believe that irrespective of the geographical region, the core banking modernization encompasses a combination of 4 key market requirements. For instance, the evolving customer expectations, the emerging compliance requirements, the growing cost pressure, and eventually the increasing need for collaborative innovations. Now, the African market is actually no exception. If you look at the customer expectations, you know that customers prefer anytime, anywhere access to banking services. Hence, the contextual experience is getting importance. The availability of self-service options is also another factor that extends convenience to the customers. Now, if you look at the African the African context, customers have the least access to the physical branch networks. So while they can still access banking via mobile and web channels, their experience remains very fragmented. Now, it's interesting to see that the smartphone penetration is increasing in the region. In fact, more than half of new mobile connections in Africa use smartphones at the end of 2021, which is actually set to increase to nearly 2/3 by 2025. So look, in this picture, obviously, African banks must be very prudent of this emerging digital savvy segment. What happens is that it will need platforms that can help them to offer a seamless omnichannel experience to their customers. So with frictionless onboarding, proactive offerings, and very much a set of comprehensive digital banking capabilities for both retail, SME, and corporate. Those systems that allow quick product configuration, offer a persona-based journey, and make the customer experience intuitive would be very much in demand. Now, if we look at some example, there are a few initiatives from African banks to better align with customer demands. For example, we have Wema Bank, which is a commercial bank in Nigeria, which launched a fully digital bank, which is called ALAT. In 2020, Mauritius Commercial Bank launched an SME platform with customizable user journeys across all the product lines. So there is a trend which is already happening there. Now, if you look at the second factor that was mentioning, the second one was about the emerging compliance requirements. Now, you know that banking is a heavily regulated industry, and fintechs have driven regulators to adapt the existing framework to these new digital players. Now, they have been essentially updating compliance norms in areas, for example, know your customers, transparency, privacy, fraud, anti-money laundering. Now, aligning with these frequently changing mandates is a challenge for legacy core banking systems and lack flexibility. The landscape, again, in Africa is evolving. Just to mention some key regulatory initiatives, which include, for example, Nigeria, the central bank introduced the banks and other financial institution apps in 2020 that actually regulate fintech providers and, in general, any type of institution that conducts financial business electronically. Then we have in Kenya, we have the central bank actually initiated a bill to regulate the conduct of digital financial services providers. In South Africa, consolidating the legal framework for banking, as it's already taking steps to enable the digitization of the industry. In Ethiopia also is gearing to allow foreign entry in the sector. Another example that comes to my mind is Mauritius. They introduced a data protection act in force that controls how businesses and government can use personal information. So it's clear that such a dynamic landscape necessitates modern core banking platforms to be robust enough to align with existing compliance mandates and flexible enough to swiftly accommodate imminent changes. Now, if we look instead at the other element, which is a growing cost pressure. Now, cost pressure continues to mount due to low margins and increasing competition from digital players. African banking industry lacks operational efficiency compared to all the other global counterparts. Banking system is disparate, siloed, and lack integration. Data distribution is decentralized, making process automation a challenge. Manual and semi-automated processes add to the cost as they induce higher operational risk. Hence, what happens is that African banks need fully integrated applications that eliminate system fragmentation, system overlaps, process duplication also. Now, in this context, although systems which carry straight-through processing and robotic process automation are definitely in demand. Now, if you look at the last factor that I mentioned was the collaboration, right? So collaboration, co-innovation are driving advancement in the banking industry globally. So players such as banks, fintechs, bintechs, non-banking financial institutions are collaborating with a wide variety of companies to create a connected ecosystem. The legacy systems lack agility and flexibility to align with the other players seamlessly, without which banks may find it challenging to maintain their value propositions to customers. So a large proportion of African banks lack the capability to integrate seamlessly with other players. What happens is that the unavailability of an orchestration layer, an API-enabled core or composable microservice-based architecture complicates the integration process. Looking at some examples, so in the Central Bank of Nigeria has already published, I think, a regulatory framework for open banking in the country. More regulators are considering a framework to enable open banking adoption in African economies. And in this scenario, banks need an infrastructure that enhances their future readiness and allows them to be more competitive. So African banks need a modern platform with a future-proof architecture, and they're considering a modular microservices-based architecture and an API-enabled core for faster integration and updates. So first movers in some markets are beginning to collaborate with third-party startups and other ecosystem players to bring in more innovations. For instance, in South Africa, there is the Nedbank, which collaborated with MasterCard, and also a fintech, I think it's called Ukesha Technologies, to launch Money Message, which is a platform for small and micro businesses to receive in-chat payments via WhatsApp. So in conclusion, it will be of critical importance for African banks to move to a robust, a modern platform that can tackle the present challenges, offer agility and adaptability for future readiness, by addressing customer expectations, the changing compliance requirements, the cost pressure, and as I mentioned, eventually enabling partnerships.
A comprehensive answer from a consultant. I would expect nothing less. Let me turn to the solutions provider. Raju, you're the man who's got the solutions that you're offering to banks. What are the challenges that African banks, from your perspective, are facing in technology, and what are the other barriers besides infrastructure?
So, I mean, looking at that, firstly, nothing that we state here, which is basically the barriers that are facing banks in Africa. It's very common to whoever is moving into this part of technology and then move towards digital. It's the same thing, right? So what we look at is what we see in Africa is the same issue. The first major issue is people and the change management of that. So I think that's a very major aspect that we would be seeing as an issue. Now,
can I just underline this? This is the first time we've actually mentioned the people in the bank as opposed to the customers. It's great that you've brought this issue up. I just want to underline it with a fat black marker for people. You've got to get the people question right. Please carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right, Robin. So essentially, I think we have ignored a bit of that, and we keep talking about the product and service, but we have not spoken about the mindset and the ability to take this into a different level, because it's not just a matter of saying that we will, transform from what the legacy banking into this part of the world. It is a major shift. It's a shift in mindset, people thinking right from the CX level downwards. And we are talking about a different mechanism and an open thinking, which is very, very one major issue is the management part of it. And then to be able to take the entire population of the banking in the next level into that tier, that kind of a change management and the planning of that is a very critical element. And if time is properly spent on that, then the results of investment is brought to fruition very much earlier. Else we sort of delay this process and we look at just providing user experience, but not seeing how that result is oriented onto the bottom line in terms of the additional revenue, etc. And that cannot happen without this kind of an end-to-end transformation. That's our first view of the challenge that is faced by banks. But this is not only to African, but it's a generic issue that I think exists in that particular thing. Of course, other than that comes in, how do we manage scope, phasing, and budget? And we don't do everything in a splash in such a way that it can't be absorbed and we can't get a way to see a quick win and be able to see a return of what is being done, and that brings to the bottom line. So I think these are the two key parameters, if I may say, of how we are seeing challenges in banking and African banking as well. However, if I look at it, in fact, the other way around, African banks, I see a lot of markets where we are seeing that the penetration of smartphone and the ability to do that is much higher compared to many other parts of the world. So therefore, this embracing may be a little more easier rather than more difficult, if I say. So these are a few things that we look at. So progressive transformation, being able to do that is very important. We can't really say that we move from A to Z directly on digital. We need to think of how to make a digital bank within the current bank and to transition services. So that gives the people as well as the clients an ability to embrace and move forward. So that's our view of it.
Okay, let me take a moment at this point to remind our audience that you have the opportunity of submitting questions for this conversation yourselves. Please feel free to do so. We will attempt to get round to them and answer them before the end of the webinar. If we don't answer your questions on the webinar, we will get in touch with you with answers after the event. So please feel free to enter your own questions and we'll try and get to them if we can. I also mentioned, you may recall, that there would be a test and that you should take notes. So we are coming up with the next poll question. Our second question, what is the most desirable / important feature for a modern core banking system? You can only choose one, people. Is it a modular architecture, enhanced UI UX, open APIs, or cloud readiness? Please vote now. And I'll leave that up for a few more seconds because people are indeed still voting. And if you're not taking part in the vote, shame on you. And I think we will call it there. And the results, open APIs. Why open APIs? Raju, any surprises there?
No, I think I was expecting that. So it's very much in tune, because if we are to go into this particular world of customer experience and enhancing all what we said, I think the open APIs is a very, very critical element where the structure and the architecture should be ready for that. That gives rise to modular architecture anyway. The question is, as long as we can go that route, I believe the banks can meet the requirements, what the clients are trying to look for in a much more easier and timely manner.
Yeah, I was actually about to say the same. When you have open APIs, then obviously all the integrations are easy and smooth. So that's really very much the key component that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, and in fact, sorry, Robin, I would also like to add to this because I'm a bit excited on this subject. Specifically, it's very close to me, so I was very excited to see that response as well coming. So yes, Open API definitely, because we have come a long way in the banking industries, all of us, we have seen the growth on the banking. But as we speak today, like go to market quick is something which is very, very important in the industry. And Open API and this kind of framework gives us that flexibility, that how quickly I get into the market, because now everybody is doing everything. It's fintechs are available, things are available. But then if you don't have that flexibility to go quick and get into your customer doorstep, then you're behind the race. So that's something which I'm very much excited. And I'm glad also that I'm actually part of a transformation. When we progress on this question, I would like to share my experience also on that subject. But that's something which I really excited to talk about. Thank you, Robert.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because I was going to put you on the spot about that very issue. So I might as well do that. What were, in terms of the core banking transformation process at Exim Bank, what were some of the approaches that you considered?
Great. So first, let me just quickly touch upon Exim. So we are a bank since 25 years in the industry. Exim is a very big brand. We have presence in 4 countries. We're in Tanzania, Uganda, Djibouti, and Comoros. And Exim is always been, innovation is life. That's what our slogan or motto is. And we have been always having a class apart services, because I'm very glad to say that I'm part of this journey since the day one. And Exim was the first bank to bring in the credit card in Dar es Salaam, basically mobile banking, mobile van. The concept of mobile bank was the first introduced by Exim in Dar es Salaam specifically. And so the journey has been very interesting. But then, as we said, that as we progressed, there's a time now when we wanted to embark on the transformation, right? And as I said, since Exim is on high growth trajectory, we wanted to have something very comprehensive core banking transformation. And of course, to talk about the consideration, what we have taken is, before embarking on this transformation, we call it Exim 4.0 transformation, is we have gone through a lot of best products in the market. So definitely we did the entire cycle of evaluation process. I will not go into much detail, but that's on the upper side of the evaluation process, where we got an opportunity to look into all the top players in the market and where we are. And at the same time, as I said, that we all are very much inspired and taking the bank to the next level of the transformation, where we are talking about the customer experience, the UI, UX, Open API, fintech approaches, and those kind of things, marketplaces. These are all our key agenda items into our transformation process. And I would say it's a very important role played into this relationship is also a vendor, with whom you are going in. Because I always say that they are our IT strategic partners. So we are together. So if you don't have a reliable or understanding vendor partner, probably you will end up into a lot of issues coming in. Everybody has everything, as I said, but then it's again, who gives you the best, right? Now, today, if I want to give a customer experience, UI and UX, for example, even if Raju is using my app, and if I'm taking him through so much of terrible steps and ugly looking app, he will probably not come into to log in next time, And I always say that nowadays customer is like, you need a quick turnaround. So today, if you have any issues, if you report to me, if I'm not able to answer your question, you just know that information is not valid for that customer. You say, go to hell. I mean, I don't want to come back to you again, right? So it's that important, because those are the earlier days. I'm telling you, Robin, very honest. We used to hold the customer behind because of our relationship. Now the relationship is more on the technology front. Customer will know you only from your technology. Relationship is there, fine, because today they have become more intelligent. They will shop around before they come to you. be it interest rate, be it in the service, immediately they know what to do. So yes, coming back to the EXIM transformation journey, yes, we have given a good thought process on this. And I'm glad to share also that we are faring very good with the help of Intellect team. IDLE, I would specifically recommend them. And they've been very good partner, understanding partner. And as I said, more of hand-holding is what is required. Today, people transformation, as Raju mentioned, is just not a core banking shift, but it's a paradigm shift. People have to accept the new technology. They have to learn what is coming in, because on our banking front line, you will see most of them are coming from the old school. They don't like the change. People, you see some sort of pushback from various people, but then this is the journey. This is where we have to bring the transformation. So transformation is just not into your technology platform, but then transformation also carries way beyond the people understanding, right? So it's from the lower end, from the teller to the customer sitting outside your bank. So that's the what we are looking at. And I would definitely say that we are heading towards that as an EXIM, and 100% sure people will see a new outlook of EXIM Bank coming up with the product internationally across the border. A lot of good modules has been also we have acquired, looking at the comfort and the requirement of the customer, so that we have better reach. And at the same time, as I said, of course, the cost reduction is also a primary concern. So you need, again, a reliable partner who will guide you through the right solution, but not focus on to make just money out of the banks. I'm sorry, Raju, if I'm disclosing something here indirectly, but that's good to mention that, that you need a good partner who understands you. Then comes is, I would talk a little bit on also on the legacy system, right? When you're carrying your legacy system, and when we are like 20, 25 years old bank, you have a lot of data information which is not in good shape at times. So that also needs some sort of cleanup, and where we really need a vendor support other than the staff who's doing that, but also to automate those processes, so that when you go into a real transformation today, if you have a fantastic BI VX for the customers, but then at the back end you don't have a data to pull in, as Charles mentioned, there's a lot of AI intelligence tool involved into it, but then if you don't have data, what you will do? You don't have anything. So that's where you need a partner who will handhold you to make sure your data migration, your integration with the vendors, because when you're coming from a legacy journey, again, a lot of things are done in a wrong way or not in an appropriate manner because of the restriction. As Vince mentioned, that API and these things are integrated, which gives a real comfort, right? If you don't have the right integration done with those vendors. So those are, I think, a few of the key things which we considered during our transformation. We had almost all our third-party interfaces been upgraded. I mean, it's a drastic, tremendous change coming into the entire platform. We have also uplifted our technology stack, be it on from the hardware to the way the high availability redundancy has been considered, so that we give an seamless, unstoppable experience to our customer and what they can express. Something which is, again, I want to highlight here is because we have seen all the products, top products in the market. And what we have got from Intellect specifically is, I'm sorry, I'm saying Intellect because I've been working on Intellect very closely. And I've also seen the other competitive products. I don't name them, but I just want to highlight some few of the key features because we are on that subject. Is comprehensive pricing engine, for example, because what happens in our legacy system, you have a lot of charges which are maintained across the board. Now, there are the chances where you have a lot of revenue leakage, which usually banking never realize the back office because it's at different levels set up. So you will have the leakage is going on and you don't know how to do it, and you're doing semi-auto, manual kind of stuff. So that's something which you are actually trying to arrest that problem, probably with the help of our Intellect team, bringing the comprehensive pricing engine. So that gives us a complete visibility across all the modules. So that's really fantastically been designed. We have also the alerts, which we normally want our customers to have a seamless experience. Because today, I'm sure when we get a small email alert, and which is like nicely customized for you, Robin, and you feel very excited, and then instantly you get. So that's something we are trying to increase that experience of the customer. Of course, the CRM is also something which we are looking at to more strengthening the process, so that any customer which is getting onboarded, we are actually tracking his entire journey. So from the start to finish, and in case if he is not being able to complete something, we have a track of records where we can then go back to customer and say, sir, okay, you were doing this and you were not able to finish this, how I can help you. And that's something which is really exciting, because I personally experienced some international banking relationship, and when I do some transaction, if I get a call from UK saying, sir, sorry, you were trying to attempt your card, but you didn't, it failed. Anything we can help you. So that's give you that comfort that somebody is really, very close to you, and that's what we are looking at. So I think all in all, and the last thing is the implementation time frame. Also, any CBS transformation, in my experience, is the critical part is the implementation time frame, because all said and done, you have put all the recipe together, but then if you're not able to do it on time, again you're losing and you're missing your bus. So implementation time is also plays very critical role with the vendor, and I'm sure, and I'm happy to say that we have a good timeline management and things with Intellect as well, which I've also experienced differently from the previous vendors. So I think that's something which I'm really appreciating and thanking for that.
Okay.
And lastly,
let me move on, because I'm conscious we're under the cosh for time. We're into our last 10 minutes. So I'd like to take advantage of the opportunity, the fact that I've got two bankers on the webinar, to ask Charles for your comments on your experiences at Cooperative Bank of Kenya. What was your approach to creating your, the word you used was delightful customer experience?
Yeah, so thank you, Robin, and always good to see the excitement like what Amin has, because this is what we live for, these transformations that we do. So I really totally understand why he kept on going. So basically, I think I'll try to put this in 3 minutes, but it's a lot really. We looked at different facets, and like I said, we put the customer right in the middle of everything, with our vision, which is to be with you all the days of our lives in very safe and joyful experiences. So across this, the approach that we took, first of all, was to ask ourselves, so how do we make this vision achievable? What are the objectives that we needed to do? What are the overall aspirations? So we had aspirations at that time when we were doing this, and we still continue to. Wow customer experience, market leader in terms of digital activity for customers, and then high levels of efficiency. We're looking at also cost to income ratio, because we don't, in as much as a customer is in the middle of everything, for an organization, we also look at the revenues. Maybe just to talk about the bank, I skipped that. Cooperative Bank started, I think, in 1968 from a capital of about $5,000 to what is 5.6 billion US dollars assets right now. We are primarily a bank that is focused on universal banking, though we started as a farmers cooperative bank that focused on credit unions, but over the years we've transformed into a universal banking. So we deal with everything and anything, consumer, corporate, credit unions, treasury, etc. Out of Kenya and South Sudan. I think the third largest bank in the region as we speak. So looking at the customer, what were the aspirations that we needed to do? We came up with the themes and the initiatives that we needed to do to support those themes, and the capabilities that we needed to put in place. And this, I would say, broadly touch about 7 aspects. I spoke about the first one, which was data and analytics. We needed to really look at the data that we had, invest a lot in analytics. Next thing, of course, is to foster innovation. Innovation and digital transformation go hand in hand. So you can't really transform digitally if you're not a very innovative bank or a very innovative organization. So we needed to foster innovation across the entire institution. As much as my title has innovation, innovation doesn't really stay in technology. Innovation is across the entire bank. Number three is leveraging on modern technologies, mobile applications, cloud, artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT. So these are the things that we needed to leverage on, and we've continued to do that. Another key aspect, of course, was upgrading of our legacy systems and processes. And I'll maybe focus on the customer experience layer, because the technology stack runs from the core systems which we're talking about today, the integration layers, the APIs, microservices. But let me briefly talk about the customer experience layer, because this is where we meet our customers. We partnered with Intellect from that perspective. One of the reasons where we did that was we needed to take control. I think Almin is the one who mentioned it. As an organization, you must take control in as far as the product that you are putting out there. Are you able to develop some of the customer journeys, some of the products quickly? And Intellect, I think, gave us that capability. So modernizing the entire technology stack. There was somebody who spoke about the staff. Again, skilling and reskilling our workforce and getting the right skills are very important. Developers, UI, UX, developers, BI developers, etc. So that needed also to change. And lastly, and certainly not the least, is executive support and leadership, having that cultural mindset shift to being very digital savvy. So if you don't change the culture across the organization, right from the top, for them to think digital, it becomes very, very difficult. So I would say that is the approach that we took, having understood the vision which we had, and also we've been very successful at doing it. So I tried to put all this within the 3 minutes that I have, Robin, so that I can buy you more time.
Thank you very much, Charles. We are ticking. The clock is ticking away from us. So let's move to the last of our poll questions, because it's kind of relevant to what we are talking about. Question 3. I want to launch that. Have I launched that?
Yes, it's visible.
I have launched that. Lovely. What is the biggest challenge faced by banks while modernizing their core banking systems? Migrating data that is present across different applications, dealing with budget constraints or overruns, meeting dynamic regulatory requirements, choosing the right technology partner. And we will talk about those issues in a moment after we have received your votes, people. So vote now and vote early, but you can't vote often, only the once, please. And just another few seconds before I call the end, so hurry up and vote. Okay, we'll call it there. Almost a dead heat between choosing the right technology partner and migrating data across different applications. I'm going to start very quick, very short, very bullet point answer. Vincenzo, your feelings on this. What are the considerations you would suggest to people when selecting a vendor?
So, see, I frankly, I believe that the vendor selection is probably the most critical step of any digital transformation journey, as it actually requires high proficiency and market knowledge. Let's say this from all the stakeholders involved, and also it requires a structured methodology in the selection process. So the very first recommendation is very much for banks to understand whether their organization carry the required technical knowledge to conduct a selection without external support. And believe me, that's not taken for granted. It is quite common to underestimate the complexity of the selection process, which actually encompasses material effort in the solution analysis. It encompasses a doc scoring model tailored on banks' priorities and a thorough knowledge of all available market solutions. So that's the very first recommendation. Secondly, I would say that bank need to identify the vendors who provide the capabilities that not only meet existing requirements of the bank, but also support the bank strategy in the long run. So banks will surely need a software vendor that can offer excellent coverage for functional and technical requirements, but also the agility in implementation and swift support, and I would say a well nested within the fintech ecosystem with strategic partnership. So the right vendor is not necessarily the one who has the best global market reputation, but it is the one that meets the specific business needs. As a very last recommendation, I would say that players with extensive global market experience would do well to support the banks and navigate unforeseen circumstances in the modernization journey, but the experience in the local market plays a crucial role in the identification of a vendor, because typically vendor complies with local regulation and has experience in having rolled out the solution to other direct competitors. So getting a partner who carries experience in the local market should automatically bring value from an implementation timeline perspective, not only as they are supposed to have already met regulatory requirements in the past, but also because their solution will reflect regional market requirements. That's what I think.
Okay, let me turn to you, Raju. We started off, I put you on the spot. You gave us a brief presentation about the trends you're seeing in global banking. Let me ask you to polish your crystal ball now and try and give us some forecasts. What is banking going to look like in 2025, and what do banks need to do to prepare for it?
Yeah, like you said, it's a crystal ball. If we knew the answers, it'd be great. But I think we'll take a shot at it. How we at Intellect think is that, in terms of the contextual and the experience is going to get to a point of really pinpoint accuracy. So we look at the factor that a lot of this would be the contextual experience we are talking about is right now very rough and very, very broad leveled. That would be pinpointed with real AI being used, the data being utilized in a very, very quick and specific manner. So that's certainly what we see is perhaps the future where it's going. Financial ecosystem development is again what we think the banks acting as a pure financial supermarket is really going to take its position in the next few years, where banks have begun on that path, but we can see that actually happening where you would have everything linked in, and the bank would be looking at the customer as a center, and the customer would be looking as a bank to provide everything that they're related to do with any financial movements that's possible. So that's the other trend which we believe is going to be the 2025 onward trend kind of thing. And what we also see is digital currencies are going to be happening, and they're already taking off in a few countries. So we see that something that's going to perhaps evolve and move forward in terms of digital currencies, and to a lesser extent of our understanding, the metaverse. So there's a financial metaverse which a lot of people talk about, which we really don't know the in-depths of that, but there is a movement in that direction. So that perhaps will develop into something more solid and significant. That's our view of it from Intellect perspective.
Well, I was just thinking in terms of the metaverse, I would look less old and less fat on screen, I think is probably the short answer. I don't know whether that would help me with my banking relationships, though. Let's get to a couple of the audience questions. We are running slightly over time, but we're still carrying the audience with us, so we'll keep going for another few minutes. Charles, question for you. What is your take on super apps? Do you think it can bring any incremental difference in banks' engagement? And if I could ask you to keep your answer fairly short so we can get another question in, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely, Robin. It does increase engagement. There's increased engagement with our customers. We open up to more customers rather than the ones we already have. Of course, then leads to more revenue to the bank, and then a better understanding of the customers and non-customers with the data that we have, understanding their lifestyle. So the answer is yes.
All right, I've got one last question I think we can fit in, and this is to you, Al-Amin. Is it advisable to have a single vendor platform?
Very tricky question, though. But I would say that yes. The reason being, it's easy to manage the single vendor. Of course, not single vendor in the sense you cannot, of course, survive with only single vendor in your organization, but the core can be a single vendor, because then it's being easily managed, and you can always have your own controls over what is happening, and things becomes easier. Your cost is being controlled, budget is being controlled, projects goes very good. So single vendor management, I would support that.
Okay, and we should probably round up, Raju, with a question to you. Somebody says here, banks have to continuously innovate. I think perhaps banks have only recently realized they have to continuously innovate because change has come very fast in the last decade or so, much faster than in preceding decades. But from your perspective, what do software providers like Intellect do to help financial institutions in sustaining continuous innovation?
Right. So from our perspective, how Intellect we look at it is, one of the key pillars of our view is the design thinking, workshops. So what we think is it's very important to first sit together with the customer and design this. The design thinking is to be put in place so that whatever we build, because it is something that we don't even know, right, what the future is going to entail. So we've got to think beyond that and build something that can be able to sustain for the future, the innovation. The other part, what we think is also innovation center of excellence. We try to work with and to advise customers that we should have a center of excellence within the bank. So it is focused and trying to look at this on a continuous basis, because it's very difficult otherwise to be able to cope with it, because again, one doesn't know 2 years later what the story is, and it's a completely different ball game by then, So we also look at trying to have programs like Cambridge and Oxford Thought Leadership. We try to bring that into bear such that we can get external thoughts into that and be able to assimilate and move that forward. So that's our view of how we try to advise and move banks forward.
Thank you very much, Raju. And I think we're going to call it there, gentlemen. Thank you for your participation, whether you've been sitting watching us as an audience member, or even more importantly, as far as I'm concerned, you've taken the time out to be on the panel. I would like to thank personally Charles Washika of Cooperative Bank of Kenya, Raju Dariani at Intellect Design Arena, Vincenzo Casilio of Cedar Management Consulting, and Al-Amin Sadruddin Merchant of Exim Bank of Tanzania. I have been, and indeed still am, Robin Amlo, Managing Editor of IBS Intelligence, and you have been watching us for just over the last hour, talking about core banking modernization. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention.